There's an item that comes strictly out of New Orleans. It's the beignets that you eat at the Cafe Du Monde. And many years ago, after leaving New Orleans, I had to make it for a party. And it's a fantastic item. Everyone that I've served it to thinks they're better than Zeppelis or that other crispy fried lightweight item. So these are all the ingredients. It is a little tricky. Certain things you have to pay attention to, and beyond that, it's a beautiful dish. You have heavy cream, yeast, salt, sugar, oil, and flour, and we're going to put it together. The first thing we do is put the sugar and the salt and the shortening into a bowl with the half a cup of boiling water, because that has to dissolve. Now this is dissolved, and now we have to wait until the temperature of this gets, let's say, down to 100 degrees. It can go lower, but you can't have it any higher, because when we mix the yeast, which is another step, this will kill the yeast. So that's done. That was simple, finished, out of the way. The next step is to dissolve the yeast in 110 degree water using a sugar thermometer. That's the correct temperature. And we'll put a half a cup of water in there. Add the correct amount, add the yeast. And dissolve the yeast in the water. Just remember, if the water is too hot, the yeast is not going to work. Okay, the yeast is dissolved, and now we're going to go on to the next step. Now one more step before we put everything into the flour is taking the egg and the heavy cream and just beating them together. Okay, so we just beat that together and wait for the next step. This is the difficult part. That board is floured. We have to roll the dough out. You have to be fast. The dough cannot rise. That's how it's made. If you go to the Cafe Du Monde, you see them making the dough, using a dough sheeter machine, rolls out the dough, and then they fry it. So we got to make the mix and do that. Here's the yeast. There's the cream. Let's put it all into this bowl first with the yeast. The temperatures are just right. That's done. We still don't have to worry. This is everything that's going into the flour. Now you can use the machine, or you can do it by hand. And I'm too lazy to get the machine out, so I'm going to do it by hand. I'll take a wooden spoon. No, let's take a metal spoon. Like I said, we got to be quick. Now we take the liquid, everything, just pour it into the flour, and we got to get moving now. So I'm going to stir this. As soon as the dough is ready, I'm going to put the dough on the board. Then I'm going to roll the dough out till it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. After 1/4 of an inch thick, we're going to cut 3 by 3 inch squares. We're going to quickly freeze them, and they will stay in the freezer until you're going to fry them. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take them out, sit them on a board, let them relax for about 15 minutes, because you don't want to throw the frozen dough into the deep fryer. And you deep fry them. And then put powdered sugar on them, and you have to serve them immediately. You cannot wait. Now I'll get my hands into this. Well, that's about it. Now, I'm going to put some of this into the freezer immediately because it's quite a bit. Feels good. So it won't rot. Keep the temperature way down on that. I'll work with about this much, and those 2 pieces I'm just going to throw them into the freezer as is. Now what I've done into the freezer, you need a spot in the freezer where you have a shelf that's flat, where you're going to put this on there to freeze. What I've done in the past, I've taken the dough, I roll it out, I get my saran wrap, and I roll it right up in the saran wrap, throw it in the freezer. And then weeks later, when I want to make the beignets, I just take it out, cut the little 3 by 3 squares, and fry them off. Which I think is the best way to do it, so that's what I'm going to do today. The same way that I've always done it. So I said you have to make this about 1/4 of an inch thick. So we'll do it that way. Okay, 1/4 of an inch thick. See, if you make it too thin, it won't puff up like an air pocket on the inside. And if you make it too thick, it won't do it also. A little bit more. We're going round on the table. The reason why I didn't go on the table, at first I said I'm going to cut it. Now since I'm not going to cut it, I don't need. If I was going to cut it, I would probably scratch the table. So now it doesn't matter. So you got to figure 1/4 of an inch. Remember, the dough can't rise. That's how it's done. Okay, look at that. It looks pretty good. So what are we going to do with this now? We're going to get that roll of saran wrap, put it right here. Take the dough, put it right like so, and then just roll it up. Notice that the saran wrap is on the dough, so that nothing's going to stick. Now what you do is you take this, and you put it in the freezer. I do a better job than I'm doing wrapping it. I want to get the ends covered well so we don't have any freezer burn. And that takes care of that. The most difficult part was just done. Now you place this in the freezer until you need it. Well, the last piece I cut, and we're going to cook some. I rolled out the dough, cut the squares, and this should be 375, but it's a little hotter. So now we just place these in there. We'll just do 2 at a time. And these will slowly brown. And if the temperature falls, you turn them. Notice how they're puffing. Oh, they puff up so nicely. Doesn't take long to cook them either. So if you're having a party like I did once, I stood here, had dessert for I had this for everybody. So I was just making these very quickly as I could, and there is done. And you can smell them. Look how they puff up. And now you just sprinkle a little powdered sugar. 3 of these were served in the Cafe Du Monde with a cup of coffee. Do that and just tell everybody you're in New Orleans. Let's make a few more. Oh, so how many would this make? I would say this is 1/3 of the dough, because the rest of the dough is rolled up in the freezer. So what we have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You cut this 9, 10, 11, 12, about 13. So 13 times 3 is 39. So you get about 40 pieces from the recipe. That's pretty good, huh? And that's what they have to do. They must puff up like that. Get that nice air pocket inside. Well, I'm going to have a couple of these now while they're still warm. And then I think I'm going to try and freeze the rest of the dough. I hope you enjoy it. Well, that's how they look after you bite into them. See that big air pocket? Now, what I've done, they don't do it in the Cafe Du Monde, but I took some blackberry extract, pure, and I put it in with the liquid just to give it a little different flavor. So you can play with things, do whatever you want. You want to put banana extract in there, anything else, or nothing, or just follow this recipe. Even the little pieces from trimming the dough that I usually throw in the garbage, nothing wrong. They're edible. They just don't have that nice appearance like the other ones do. But hey, why throw something good in the garbage?